You are a Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Atlanta Braves, well, this last week or 10 days has probably been, well, your kind of time, because the Braves have finally started playing some baseball that makes you feel like maybe they have discovered who and what they can be here in the course of 2024, because the team that was playing through May and the first couple of weeks of June had you probably scratching your head and asking some pretty serious questions. But the Braves offense has provided some answers lately. They took 2 out of 3 from the New York Yankees over the weekend, did the Braves, continuing their momentum from a very good homestand. We're going to talk all about it on this edition of the Postcast. As you can tell, Jake Mastriani is out. He's on vacation. I got Brad Rowland pinch hitting for me today. He, of course, is of Hammer Territory, the podcast that you can subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. And speaking of which, go ahead, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to Locked On Atlanta here on YouTube and to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB. Use the code LockedOnMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match of up to $100. But Jake, with all of that house cleaning, or excuse me, Brad, with all of that house cleaning out of the way, I would say that we're in a pretty good spot if you're the Atlanta Braves, as the month of June may not have started out the way that they wanted it to, but it's picking up some serious steam as we close it out.
That's right. Winning 8 out of 10 is kind of all you can ask for after the way that I don't know about you and your listeners and your viewers reacting to that downturn earlier this month and at the end of May. It was getting kind of dire out there when it came to the vibes. So improving some of that with a rash of wins, especially going up and beating a very, very good Yankees team, not only just beating them in general, but also beating them on the road in New York. Everyone's feeling better these days.
Yeah, and I know some people will point to, well, I mean, the Yankees lineup is a bit top-heavy, but as far as that goes, you can't find much more of a tough lineup to have to deal with, because eventually those guys seem to make you pay, whether it's Juan Soto or Aaron Judge. And unfortunately, Giancarlo Stanton is back in a place he knows all too well, the injured list. But it's not just those 3 guys. The Yankees, as you mentioned, are a very good pitching club, and the Braves were able to pick up a couple of wins, a convincing one to start with. And then I felt like just a really overall well-played game on Sunday to take 2 out of 3, Brad. Jared Kelenic has been right in the middle of things offensively as he is setting a tone atop the order. Another homer today. He's just doing what you need, and I think that's just bringing consistency to the leadoff spot, because goodness knows the Braves have had 2 rather notable setbacks there.
Absolutely. And, I think that it was fair to ask what was going to happen in that leadoff spot when those injuries took place. And Kelenic had been fine. He had not been hurting them in any major way, but the bat had just been okay. But ever since he was put up in that spot, whether it's randomness or whatever it has to be, he's been very good. His OPS is soaring well over 800 this month. In the month of June, he's got 4 home runs this month, and he looks comfortable. He's very, very strong approach, not just results, just the approach and things. He looks very comfortable in that role. And with the defense, he's also capable of playing some center field right now, like he's been asked to do. It's been a welcome. I'm not even going to say it was a surprise. It's just been a very encouraging little stretch for him, for a guy who has immense pedigree. Hasn't had a full season of this quite yet, but he's kind of showing signs of the guy that everybody thought he might be.
Yeah, and it's kind of what the Braves were envisioning, that he would just take those steps forward, that they would be able to give him those everyday at-bats. And I know that was part of the plan back in spring training, and this has been a talking point that has kind of been thrown around and obviously has been crumbled up and thrown in the trash at this point, because necessity is having Jared Kelenic play every day. But I feel like, Brad, that this is something he's earned, and he's continued to take the adjustments that he made in spring training, tweak those, build upon it, and really cashed into what dates back to about a calendar month's worth of good production for him. Over his last 27 games, he's hitting just under 300. He's slugging over 500. Those are the kind of numbers the Braves will be very, very happy to have playing every day.
Absolutely. And the fact that he's been able to hang in there against lefties, that was one of the big questions about Kelenic. He had not been able to really do that, at least in a large sample size. And even the Braves were kind of sheltering him from having to do that early in the year out of being able to do that with comfort and having their full roster. But as you said, kind of necessity, he's having to be in there every day, and he's done well. Obviously, he homered off a lefty today as we're talking, and lots of quality plate appearances. And I'm still might be a little bit skeptical of him, and as far as the platoon splits are concerned, but you're going to face more righties than lefties. I think he's going to be just fine. And in general, the Braves have to be thrilled with the way he's been looking.
And I feel like this is also, I mean, you could point at Matt Olson or any of a number of guys who were younger kind of coming up. Were they going to be able to establish themselves as an everyday guy and face the lefty on lefty matchup, which, is a split that oftentimes is unkind to players, particularly when they don't get the opportunity that Kelenic is getting right now. So I think from and this may sound crazy for a guy that's been in the big leagues for several years and had some opportunities to really get the chance to play every day and to face those lefties. That's something I think that Jared, and in talking to him a little bit, he welcomes that challenge, and you got to appreciate the approach and, of course, the early results here in what might well be right now a little bit of small sample size theater, but it's certainly a trend worth monitoring, and you got to be pleased with, as you pointed out, the early results versus lefties.
It can be fraught too. I mean, it's one of those things where he kind of has to be that. I'm sure there was a conversation to be had, like, all right, Jared, go get him. You're going to be in there every day for a while, and we'll see what happens. And yeah, there's downside to that, but also it can be really encouraging and help a guy's confidence to just be in there every day, be able to find his footing. And, even dating back to Seattle, where he was a guy who was a high draft pick, he wasn't given the longest leash you've ever seen. It was kind of small bursts. And yeah, some of that's just, more art than science, but that's the way this stuff goes in baseball sometimes. You got to have to find your level, and you don't want to anoint him too quickly either, but I do think that the Braves have to be okay with what they've seen so far, and he's going to be there for a while longer every day, and I think he's kind of earned the benefit of the doubt to at least not be terrified when he's facing lefties.
Definitely, and with the platoon being the way that it was before Adam Duvall, who was the other man who was pretty much pushed into everyday duty after that, he was wearing out lefties doing his part against that part of the platoon, so you can't really argue with that so much. But the everyday reps and that opportunity, that's got to be big for Jared Kelenic as he looks to establish himself in Atlanta. Now, Max Fried is somebody who's established himself quite well in a Braves uniform. He was just fine in this one as well. 6 innings of 1-run ball. It helped the Braves get out of town, taking 2 out of 3. Brad, we've talked about the starting pitching quite a bit here this season. I'm sure you and Scott Coleman have been talking about it a lot as well, because strangely, somehow, this club that was an offensive juggernaut a year ago has turned into what has felt like, at least for a while, a pitching-first team. And now seeing Max Fried shake off any doubts that were happening early in the season and establish himself again alongside some other veterans, he's really setting the tone for this Braves club, and Atlanta certainly happy he's doing this part.
Yeah, it's been vintage Max in recent days, which is a lot of fun to get into. And you said it, but this is a team that has been, I guess, shockingly in some ways, led by their pitching. Not that it was going to be a huge weakness necessarily coming into the year. I think the book on the Braves was that they were kind of loaded everywhere, but if you had to lean in one spot, it was going to be the offense. The offense has been pretty good lately, but it's been the pitching all year long. I believe they're second right now in runs allowed in the National League. In that runs category, there's all those underlying metrics, and I'm big into those things. But in the end, it's how many runs do you score? How many runs do you give up? And they've been very good in the run prevention department. Some of that's defense too, but the pitching's been tremendous, especially when you factor in what they've lost with Strider to be able to do this the way they have been. And a lot of that's their top 3 or 4 rotation guys. And Max Fried, after a little bit of a rocky start, has been awesome.
Yeah, and I've said this before, and I'll just throw it out there again. I mean, if your big problem is, well, Charlie Morton's your number 4 starter and you're just not sold on that, you are in a position that probably 29 other teams would like to find themselves in, because injury, there's no predicting it. And oftentimes there's no good backup plan for it, or at least it's difficult to find the backup that you need, because typically these things stack up. Just look at where the Braves were a year ago, trying to fill in for Fried and Wright at the same time, and needing some help out of the minor leagues to at least get through all of that. And they were able to figure it out. But Max Fried has proven that he's healthy, got over what I felt was just a weird start for him, and was once again right in the middle of good things in the Bronx on Sunday. Atlanta's starting to put together that June turnaround that we wondered about with this recent success. I know the month of June has been very kind to the Braves the last couple of years. This month may not, rate out the way that the last two have, but Brad, you have to feel good about the fact that not only are the Braves trending in the right direction, but exactly the who and the what that's trending, being the offense, and several key bats that you wanted to see shake off those slow starts, continue to do some of that in the series this weekend against New York.
Yeah, obviously, I think everybody knows this offense is better than it was performing earlier this season. Not a huge mystery there. How much better, where that kind of level lies, it's certainly worth debating, especially without Ronnie and all that stuff. But I think they've at least shown signs and giving you not every night, but more of those explosive innings, more of those explosive games. We're putting up quick numbers, and that's all you have to have. And Alex said this. I'm sure I've talked about this before as well. This is a team that relies on power, and for them to actually hit for some power in recent days, when that happens, they tend to win baseball games.
Yep, they do. And it was kind of just wondering there, especially in the month of May. I mean, were we going to see multiple home runs in the same game, or was that a thing of the past? But the Braves are starting to do that quite a bit as well. And that certainly helps out, because as I've heard, when you score more runs than the other guys, typically you're going to enjoy your day at the office. And I got a big kick out of Sean Murphy this past week against the Tigers saying, anytime the other team doesn't score, we feel really good about our chances. But tongue-in-cheek remarks aside, this is a club that is trending in the right direction and wants to keep this momentum going, of course. third consecutive series win for the Braves. They'll be aiming for another one in St. Louis. We will talk about that and much more as the Braves postcast continues. Summertime means baseball, the NBA Finals, and more. And you can bet on all of it at FanDuel. And right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're looking for promotions, Prize Pick has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stats and projections on Tuesdays, which increases your chance of getting a win, to getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. So get in on that daily action with your friends and become a part of the Prize Picks community today. Download the Prize Picks app and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app. That code is LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match of up to $100. Well, Brad, let's jump inside the line score and the box score of this game. A good one for the Braves, who picked up the victory to take 2 out of 3 from the New York Yankees with their 3-1 win. Atlanta's now 43-32. This already game 75 of the season, approaching the statistical halfway point here, as again, the Braves are 43-32. New York Yankees are 52-28 on the year. Braves with 3 runs on 6 hits, no errors, and left 4 men on base. The Yankees just 1 run, 7 hits, no errors. They also left 4. Max Fried picks up the win. He is 7-3. Nestor Cortez takes the loss, drops to 4-6. The save goes to Raisel Iglesias, his 20th of the year. I want to talk about Max Fried here a little bit more. 6 innings, 6 hits, 1 earned run, no walks, and 4 strikeouts. If there's anything I've noticed, Brad, about Max Fried, is that his arsenal, which includes 5 or 6 pitches just about any day, and maybe a 7th if they want to keep calling his slider a sweeper, which Max Fried has gone to great pains to say, I'm not throwing a sweeper, it's still my slider. But however it's categorized, these pitches are working. And of the things that make Max Fried so dangerous, in my opinion, is as he has matured as a starting pitcher and really established himself going back to, I would say, the 2020 season for sure, his arsenal has gotten even better and even more dangerous, with hitters having so many things to think about.
That's absolutely right. And if you watch even the start on Sunday, focusing on that, he had the whole arsenal working. You know, he sort of seemed to run out of gas a little bit near the end, which we can come back to if you want to. But the first 4 or 5 innings, like it was everything. He was locating every pitch. Guys were off balance constantly. When you have that many different offerings, nobody can be comfortable against you. And Max has always been really, I think, undervalued, especially nationally, but even regionally occasionally. I think Max is just an absolute nails ace. And it's not like he has this one, he's not throwing 100 every night. It's not one of those things where he's relying on that fastball. He can do all of those things, command his pitches, and just keep everybody all on their toes or off their toes, however you want to say that.
Yeah.
All the time. It's not easy to face Max Fried at all. And the underlying numbers kind of paint that picture too, where it's not just one thing that allows him to dominate. He really does have that incredible balance.
Yeah, and he can work that fastball 93, 94, then run it up to 96 or 97 if he needs to. But he also throws a 2-seamer. He throws the cutter. He throws a slider. He throws a curveball. He throws a changeup. I guess if he's throwing a sweeper, let's make it a nice, easy 7 pitches. But all jokes aside, it's nothing funny about this for opposing hitters when you're trying to key in on something, because the confidence of Max Fried as well to throw those pitches in just about any count to any hitter is what helps him generate such low, contact. The quality of the contact is incredibly low when you look at what he's able to do on that average exit velocity side, typically in the low 80s, and it's consistent with that start over start. And he was able to keep a powerful Yankees lineup pretty much under wraps in this one, even though he did have to scrap a bit. I don't know about you, but I kind of like it when somebody's got to dig down, make those pitches, and finish off that outing strong, and Fried did that today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think he didn't have a sky-high pitch count. People are maybe a little bit funny about that. I saw some discussion about that after the game. It's like, no, it was clearly laboring a little bit, and that's okay. I think one of the upsides of Max Fried is that he knows how to operate when he doesn't have his best stuff anymore at that point in time in the game. And he got the biggest single pitch of the game, I would argue, might have been that double play in the 6th inning to get his last pitch of the game, and to keep that lead where it was. That allowed him to kind of, leave the game comfortably at 87 pitches, capped off a stretch where I think in the last 11 starts, his ERA is under 2. He has just been absolutely dialed in for months now after that really kind of weirdly bad start where I think no one was worried. It's Max Fried. He has this long track record. But yeah, it was good to see him. And it's something actually that Charlie's done too, mentioning Charlie before. Guys who can pitch when they don't have their best stuff and at least just get you that extra inning or two, that extra batter or two. It really tends to add up over the course of a very, very long baseball season, and Max is very good at that.
And especially when you consider what the Braves are trying to do with their innings in that rotation and the extra arm that they've been using here or there and the day's rest that they've been trying to generate for Chris Sale and Reynaldo Lopez in particular. You're only able to do things like that if other guys are also taking the baton on their day and doing exactly the kinds of things Fried did today. He had a gassed up and ready to go bullpen as well behind him, as you had Pierce Johnson, Joe Jimenez, and Raisel Iglesias come in, a scoreless inning for each, 5 strikeouts between the three of them. Brad, it's no real secret. AJ Minter out on rehab. I saw him yesterday. Looks like he's feeling good. We'll see what the next step is for him. But these guys, especially Johnson and Jimenez, who re-signed with Atlanta, and Iglesias in the 9th inning, this is pretty much the recipe for closing down a game if you're the Atlanta Braves, and they delivered again today.
Yeah, it's kind of a throwback to the old night shift, right? Like you can just hand the ball off to this trio or quartet, or however many guys do you have down there that you absolutely love, being able to be really comfortable. And look, on a lot of teams would have maybe asked Max, that's kind of hard to say that, to go another inning in this game. You know what I mean? He's 87 pitches. He could have maybe started the 7th, but why? You hand the ball off to your guys that you absolutely trust. They back up that trust. And I believe coming out of today's game, the Braves are second or third in all of baseball in bullpen ERA. It's been nails like it has been. Even guys who have gotten hiccups here or there, that's going to happen over the course of a long season. But even deeper guys, Aaron Bummer, without AJ recently, Pierce Johnson is a guy that I just can't get enough of right now. He's pitching out of his mind and has been since he really arrived in Atlanta. So Raisel's the guy at the end, but even before that, you got a lot of guys and a lot of options and a lot of different, I would say, quality options for Brian Snitker to evaluate.
And a lot of important outs to get to before the final 3. I know that there's that old saying, and I believe it. I mean, those last 3 outs are oftentimes a different task for pitchers depending on what their approach is, but there's some big outs to get in the 6th, 7th, 8th inning, as we saw today, as the Braves bullpen was able to do just that. On the offensive side, we talked about Jared Kelenic earlier, the home run off Nestor Cortez, second home run of this series. And for Kelenic, I believe that was number 5 on this. No, make that number 7 on the season. But he's got 5 of those here in this last month's worth of good play for him. He's got a 10-game hitting streak overall. He's got 8 straight games with hits as the Braves leadoff man, also delivered a sacrifice fly. So really, when you break it down, the 2 runs that were produced and created, if you will, by Jared Kelenic were pretty important in a 3-run game, a 3-1 win, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, if that's all they had done in this game, it would have been enough, technically. You don't want to assume that over the course of 9 innings, but he was certainly the star. Of course, it feels like every day we say this, but Marcell Ozuna, 2 hits every day. Somehow he just rolls out of bed and hits 2 hits every day. And I will say, maybe kind of a small thing, but Orlando Arcia has been struggling recently. He doubled in this game, maybe something small to just lead him into the next week to find something. Because I think that's one spot in the lineup that's been a little bit of a question mark recently, has been Orlando. And if he can maybe grab onto something with that extra base hit that he had today.
Yeah, and as I've said, and I'm sure you guys have talked about this quite a bit on Hammer territory, but when the Braves lineup, as constructed in the way that you would expect it to be, has so many other players hitting and kind of starring on offense, you're not really worried about what's happening with Orlando Arcia. And typically, Orlando Arcia won't be hitting in the middle of your order either, which who knows what all was going on in the month of May? Really nobody, because nobody seemed to have answers if they weren't named Marcell Ozuna. And then a little bit later on, Matt Olson. Now here lately, you see that Austin Riley has started to come around. We've talked about Kelenic a lot. I think Ozzy Albies has looked good lately as well. It's about finding that consistency and the continuity of that lineup, where these are guys I've talked to that they don't really care where they hit. They just like knowing that they're coming to the ballpark. They're going to be in the lineup because, as Austin Riley told me a couple of years ago when he was going through one of these slumps, I can't get out of it and I can't help the team from the bench. So you got to figure that out. And I think the same thing is true for Orlando, who has been very good defensively and maybe surprisingly so. But you see some nights where that arm makes a play that's a big deal. And I'm not saying that no other shortstop they have could make some plays defensively and that that's all his value is. But this is just kind of one of those things where if everything else is clicking, Orlando Arcia's, slump, if you will, might not stick out so much as it has with a Braves offense that has had more than a few guys with slumps that they would rather have ended much sooner than they did.
That's definitely right. And yeah, the numbers are a little bit grim for Orlando at the plate. I'm sure they're not worried, but looking at that and seeing what they can do to help him with that. But you're right. Like, if there's a spot of the diamond where you don't have to worry about that too much, as long as he's catching the ball and doing what he's been doing for quite some time at shortstop, playing defense in this lineup, you could hit him 9th, kind of hide him there a little bit. And if the guys who are supposed to be delivering, like you just laid them out in order, Olsen, Riley, Murphy, all those guys, if they're performing the way they usually perform and where they were performing earlier this year, but now kind of have been recently to go along with Ozuna, who's been fantastic, then that spot in the lineup that, you don't want to call it, it's not a zero, but it's like more of a bonus when Orlando does something. It's definitely not as magnified. And look, if they were 2-8 in the last 10 games, would it be getting more attention? Probably. But when they're winning and they're scoring runs, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's just one of those things where it takes everybody. It's not going to typically be, and we saw when one guy is red hot and the other guys are all struggling, it doesn't really work out too well. Now you just got to try to get a few of these guys hot at the same time, and maybe Marcell Ozuna will keep doing what he's been doing, because everything that he has been able to supply for the Braves here in the first half of the season has been invaluable. And 2 more hits for him on this day was good to see as well. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more about what is going on for the Braves currently, their winning ways, the series wins that are starting to stack up, and, of course, take a look ahead to what is going on the next stop of this road trip. That is in St. Louis, and it comes your way next on the Braves Postcast. Get supplies from the site that is made for the skilled trade. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. And if you need help with an order, you can get expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can get competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free TradeMaster program. Every TradeMaster gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order as well. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM and order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks. That's SupplyHouse.com. Well, Brad, let's look ahead for what is next for the Braves and also what the Braves have accomplished right now. They'll continue this road trip with a 3-game stop in St. Louis against a Cardinals team that has kind of been treading water a bit this season. They're over 500, but they've had their own set of challenges. The Braves, meanwhile, as they continued their winning ways, are now back to 11 games over 500. They have won 8 out of 10, as you just mentioned. They're 7 games back of the Phillies, and I think it's kind of an interesting time here as we move ahead over the next 4 or 5 series at least between the next time that the Braves and Phillies will meet. What is the NL East going to look like, and can the Braves keep this momentum up?
Yeah, that's the ultimate question, right? Like, is it going to be a race or is it not going to be a race? And we're in this area right now where I think it still will be a race. The Braves have done a good job bouncing back. If they hadn't in the last couple of weeks, the margin would be a lot bigger and it'd be more of a question mark. But you would think that Philly, not that they're going to regress hard, because I think that's a really good baseball team.
Yes.
Unfortunately for the Braves, the Phillies are quite good this year. But I think that the Phillies, if anything, we're probably not going to continue the pace that they were on early when they were just winning, 3 out of every 4 games. It's not sustainable for anybody. But with the Braves playing this well, there are some winnable games between now and that series, as you mentioned, in early July. And, you get the Pirates, you get some home games against the Giants, that's some winnable games there. I think it's going to be a big series. That's not breaking news to anybody. But if you're within 5 or 6, so even if it's still 7 right now, you have the optimism going into July to be like, you know what, we're in this thing. The Braves have done this before. We all kind of know that now, that a much bigger deficit than this against the Mets, and no one in that clubhouse is going to be terribly worried about a 7-game deficit in June.
No, I don't think so. I mean, as much as you want to dismiss it out of sight, out of mind, everybody's kind of aware of how things are trending. But with so much baseball left to be played, it's hard to get hung up on it early in the year. And the Braves do a really good job of kind of tuning out that noise. But the Phillies, they may not regress hard and fall back to earth just based on, as you just pointed out, they're a pretty good baseball team. But the last I checked, nobody's winning at a 750 or 760 clip in this game for an entire 162 game season. That would be quite impressive. It's very rare for somebody to have that kind of sustained success. And the Braves clearly capable of playing better than they have been. It's incredible that this club, despite all of these struggles, for the majority of this past, month and a half, nearly 2 months, they've still managed to keep themselves basically 10 games over 500 by the time that they had gone through the ebbs and the flows. And right now, they're certainly on one of the hot streaks. Offensively, some things have been put together. The NL Central, in which the Cardinals are a member, it's not exactly a powerhouse by any means. I'm not sure that race is over. The Cardinals, though, do seem to need a lot of help. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, not really the players that they were a while back, and they're looking, I think, to get a little bit of a pick-me-up if they can from some of their players maybe getting back to normal as well. But I don't know, Brad, maybe it's just a case of this is another club that's just offensively trying to find itself in a season in which offense is kind of down across Major League Baseball.
Yeah, definitely. And, that's one thing that stood out to me looking at the Cardinals is that I believe they are tied for the second fewest runs scored in the National League, despite being above 500 right now. So a little bit smoke and mirrors. Run differential is negative right now, but they are playing well recently. I think they're 19-9 in their last 28. So they've had this little positive run. I don't know what to make of that. Last year, it was so weird to see the Cardinals that far down in the standings. The Cardinals are just seemingly always pretty good, and they just weren't a year ago, and they started out this season slow. It's like, what's going on with the Cardinals? And now they've found something. I don't know if it's going to continue, but it's not a team that's going to blow you away. Of course, the Braves just went into New York and won 2 out of 3. The Yankees are a lot more talented than the Cardinals are right now, so it's not like it's this crazy situation, but it's also not a walkover either. The Cardinals they've been playing better baseball, but is their run prevention that's carried them this year so far. So if the Braves can score on them, you should be in pretty good shape.
And the Braves have powered up here lately. We've seen a lot of that, whether it's Jared Kelenic, Sean Murphy, Austin Riley. Can they continue that as they face a couple of veteran pitchers that we know of? Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson will get the ball in the first couple of games to be determined in Game 3. Meanwhile, on the Braves side, rookie Spencer Schwellenbach aiming to make it back-to-back winning efforts as he gets to start in Game 1. Then it's Reynaldo Lopez, followed by Chris Sale to face St. Louis. Charlie Morton will get to start in the one game in Chicago. You and I haven't gotten to talk about Spencer Schwellenbach altogether that much, but I will say after the last couple of starts, the progress that he has made, you kind of feel like, Brad, the Braves may have finally stumbled upon somebody to help them out in that 5th spot.
Yeah, back-to-back quality starts there from him is all they had. I'm sure that was a welcome surprise, or not a surprise, a welcome event of any kind, basically, for Schwellenbach. And, we'll see how long this lasts, but they, at least according to their probables, they're going to go away from the 6-man rotation, at least for the week. They moved everybody back up to their normal spot, and Schwellenbach's still there. And I think he's earned the benefit of the doubt for a little while. Now, if he has a couple blow-up starts in a row, maybe they change something. But after 2 good starts in a row, there was kind of no doubt he was going to pitch on Monday. He was lined up for that spot. We'll see how he looks on the road. But, yeah, I've been very encouraged with the way he's pitched. And, yeah, the Tigers' offense, not the best, but he went into Baltimore and pitched very well. That's a very good offense. So I've been encouraged. And, you want to keep your expectations manageable for a young guy in his first tour through the league. But some very good signs.
Yeah, and we don't know what it's going to look like as the Braves approach the trade deadline in terms of maybe finding another starter. But you knew when A.J. Smith-Shawver came up and immediately got hurt. Schwellenbach got an opportunity as a result of that. Hurston Waldrop came up, did not pitch well. Now he's hurt, though it's not believed to be serious, but he's kind of out of the plans. We've seen Darius Vines and Alan Winans and Dylan Dodd and some of the other guys who are in AAA. Obviously, Bryce Elder kind of pitched his way out of the picture, at least in the short term. And some guys, Huascar Ynoa, no idea when he's going to be back on the mound, unfortunately, after his latest setback. And Ian Anderson's still about a month away from being any part of Atlanta's plans. So as you look at it comprised with the guys and the options that they have, this is a pretty big opportunity and an open door, really, for Schwellenbach to, if he, to your point, continues to pitch well, I think he's going to continue to get opportunities at the big league level, which is a wild thing to say and to think, dating back to spring training when you thought, okay, there's all this depth. Were we really going to call a guy straight up from Double-A to make his big league debut? But that's where we're at.
That is where they're at for sure. And, I will certainly admit I am not a leading prospect expert, but he was kind of on the radar. People that I trusted do like him, but I was not banking on starts from him in June of 2024. I don't think anybody was. So for him to, kind of a uneven start, but the last 2 outings have been really strong. And he's 24. Like he is more polished than a lot of the guys that might have maybe more high-end stuff than he does, just raw power, all that stuff. I kind of see him being a guy who could stick for a while. And after this start on Monday, maybe a start against Pittsburgh at home, not the most challenging in the world. Like it's pretty set up for him if he can keep it going.
No, a couple of more chances for him to build on this momentum. And he has done, I think, a really nice job of not making his problems worse by struggling with his command. He will stay in the strike zone, live in the strike zone. If anything, that seems to be about the only time he runs into trouble, is maybe being a little bit too much around the plate when he has a chance to put some guys away. But the adjustments he's made the last couple of starts, it's hard to argue with both the eye test and the numbers that we're seeing. Schwellenbach's 1-2, 4.98 ERA on the year. Lance Lynn 2-3, a 4.08 for the veteran righty who returned to St. Louis this season. First pitch is set for 7:45 p.m. Eastern time on Monday as the Braves and Cardinals open up their 3-game series in St. Louis. That's going to wrap us up here on the Braves Postcast. My thanks to Brad Rowland for riding along on this edition of the show. And my thanks to all of you for always keeping us busy here on the postcast. Make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube, and make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcasts. Once again, the Braves with a 3-1 win, took 2 out of 3 from the New York Yankees. Next stop is St. Louis, and we will catch you next time on the Braves postcast. And until then, I'm Grant McAuley. So long, everyone.